Hello and welcome to the Musical Instrument Investigator. Today we're on the website of Arteal auctions based in Switzerland, and I think this might well be our first Swiss auction ever, so that's quite exciting. This was actually pointed out to me by a member on a forum that I frequent about the violins, and I wasn't aware of this particular auction house, or if I did come across it, I kind of forgot about it. It seems that they might have had an auction last year that we missed, which is unfortunate, but at least we have this auction to go through, so that's going to be quite exciting. It seems that this particular auction is live now. It's been live since June the 14th and it's due to end on July the 4th, though quite a good while until this auction ends, because it's the 19th at the moment at the time I'm recording this. Looks like there's 195 lots, violins, cellos and bows. That's a theme of this. Obviously the values are in the Swiss francs. It's roughly something like 89 pence to 1 Swiss franc, but we can just say 1 for 1 for now, so we can just assume 30 to 50 is 30 to 50 pounds. It's not quite right, but it's close enough. I believe that the buyer's premium is something slightly odd, like 24.54%. It's probably got some kind of VAT or something involved in that, so we'll have to check that out a bit later, but I think it shows up when you click on the lot. As I say all the time, so this is a Swiss auction. So if you are bidding outside of Switzerland, then check all your terms and conditions about kind of shipping, import charges, export, etc., all of that lovely fun stuff, and any other charges there might be. And yeah, I think without further ado, let's continue with this first Swiss auction and see what we have. Let's see what we've got here. So we have a Suzuki violin in perfect condition, so it's a kind of Japanese trade violin there. 30 to 50 is the estimate, and we have a kind of token, kind of classic 3 pictures there, front, back and the side of the scroll, very similar to kind of our Marty in that way. Looks like we can kind of zoom in a bit as well. Photos look fairly high res. Looks like we can probably do full screen as well, so that is pretty good. 356 length of back, conditions of sale, etc. Looks like you can bid online on this other website as well, so that's good. Let's carry on. I wonder if we can do a bit of a translation thing here and see how that kind of goes on. So a Brazilian 3/4 size violin bow, signed J. Valdecir, Brazil, and they're saying 50 to 150 is the estimate on that. Once again, pictures look fairly good. A whole lot of bows here, various bows, 50 to 150 Swiss francs, so it's roughly 50 to 150 pounds. Looks like could be some. Looks like a more interesting bow lot than a lot of the bow lots we get in the UK in any case. Another lot of 5 bows. Looks like it's going to continually keep reminding me of that every time we click on, unfortunately. So a lot of 5 bows again. One made by Francois Lot apparently, so 50 to 150 again is the estimate there. Another lot of bows there, 50 to 150. A mandolin guitar, so that's an interesting one here. Let's see if we get any other information here. By Camille Royale in Fenel-le-Petit, 1901. Let's see, we just got a font in the back there. They're looking at 50 to 150 there. It's in good condition. Interesting enough kind of instrument, one of those kind of slight oddities. So it's 3 bows here of the cello kind. 3 baguettes de violoncelle. Let's see. We might have to give up on the translations all the time. Violin Bow by Charles Nicolas Bazin here. Length 73, weight 59.9. Snakewood stick and button. That's interesting. Viola Bow, French work from Mirecourt, around 1900. Inspired by Taut, 100 to 300 there. 2 cello bows from the German school. Simple got frog and head pictures, looks quite interesting. 100 to 150 there. Violin bow from the workshop of JTL there, 1920, signed Grandini. Looks like it needs a bit of work. German violin, 19th century, Guarnerius model. Interesting bird's eye back there, 362 length of back, 100 to 150. German school violin bow, 100 to 200 on that. Violin Miracle, 1920s, 100 to 150 is the estimate there. 2 violin bows in good condition, one by Émile Francois Houchard, 100 to 120 Swiss francs is the estimate. A lot of 5 small bows, 120 to 250. Louis Morizon Sun bow, red tinted varnish, ebony nickel silver frog, 125 to 250. All the kind of estimates seem fairly reasonable. German violin, early or late 19th to early 20th century. And violin bow, German school, 100 to 200 there. Violin made in Germany, 3/4 size, 1920, so they're saying 150 to 200. German violin from the end of the 19th century with a Degani label, looks fairly standard. 3 violin bows, including one by Cien Bazar, 150 to 300 is the estimate. Looks like fairly decent. Cello, French work in Miracle, 1920s, 1930s, 150 to 200 Swiss francs is the estimate. German violin, around 1900, with a Strad label, 150 to 200. Looks like a fairly normal kind of trade violin. 3/4 German violin, bearing Schuster & Co. label, 150 to 180. Violin from the Bazaar School, or violin stick from the Bazaar School. Violin made in Miracle in the Lebert house, 359 length of back, 150 to 200 is the estimate there. Violin Miracle violin, 1900 to 1920, 360 length of back. Interesting colour change from the scroll to the body there. A violin bow, German school there, Frechner school, the same there, 200 to 400. Violin early 20th century from JTL, 200 to 300 there. Late 19th century bow from Simon school, 2 to 300. Violin bow by Marc Lebert, and 200 to 300 on that. Violin bow from the German school, seems to be another bow pictured as well, although it doesn't seem to mention that, so it's a bit strange. 2 to 300 there. German violin made around 1900, 359 length of back. So lost one of its eyes there, so needs a bit of work. 2 to 300. German violin with a label of Paolo Luigi, 2 to 300 is the estimate on that. German violin, circa 1817 to 1880, no fingerboard, 2 to 300 is the estimate there. Violin, probably German work, with a label for Robert Lengel, label 1924. And French Violin Bow, made by Marc Lebert, 200 to 300. German Violin, circa 1900, 359 length of back, 2 to 300 is the estimate there. Viola Bow, made in the JTL workshop, that's 2 to 300. Violin, late 18th or early 19th century there. Sorry, actually probably Austrian. Misspoke there. Just two pictures on that, 2 to 300. Various restorations. German Violin there, 1920s, 2 to 300 is the estimate. Factory Czechoslovakian Violin and its bow, looks in fairly decent condition there, 2 to 300. Violin Bow of the German school, signed FN Vora, 250 to 500 there. Ooh, I think we've just missed one there. Yep, Viola Bow, French work made for Maison Boucher, 250 to 500 there. Cello Bow, German school, 250 to 500. French bow, late 19th century for Viola, Simon school, is an interesting looking bow there, 250 to 500. Cello Bow, German school, 250 to 500. French Violin Bow, circa 1920, 300 to 500 there. German Violin, Jules label, Heinrich Zimmermann, 300 to 500 there. German Violin, early 20th century, in excellent condition, 3 to 400 euros. Sorry, not euros, Swiss francs is the estimate. French work, violin made by Marcel Grandcolas around 1930. The F holes are experimental. I think we could definitely agree on that. That is highly unusual. 3 to 400 is the estimate. Let's have a look a bit closer into these. That's really quite interesting. People do like to experiment. I'm not sure what it will do for the sound, but definitely interesting. And a nice German violin, circa 1920, 3 to 400 is the estimate there. 3/4 size French violin, 3 to 400, saying 8th century Mirecourt work there, made by Jean-Baptiste Lemarquis. A lot of 3 bows from the German school, 3 to 500. Interesting cello stick with its frog of German origin, 3 to 500. Violin Bow by Eugene Cugnot, Huri, 3 to 600. Louis Bazin Violin Bow, signed Vanelli, 3 to 500. Violin Bow of the German school, 3 to 500. 4 violins, violin 3/4 in Mirecourt, another 3/4 Mirecourt. Actually, they're all 3/4 Mirecourt violins there. It's 120 to 150 Swiss francs is the estimate there. Viola Bow from the German school, circa 1950, 350 to 550. Violin Bow Bouchard school stick. Picture is not appearing for this. I'm not sure if it's a technical difficulty or not, but no picture there. 4 to 600. We'll pass on that one. Violin Bow from the school of Nicolas Mayer, 400 to 800. French violin, circa 1800, bearing an iron mark for Nicolas Sautre. Interesting looking violin. Some cheek repairs there at the side. 4 to 500. Definitely curious. Bow with iron mark, Meunier, German school, 4 to 600. Violin from Eastern Europe, 360 length of back, 4 to 500 is the estimate. German violin from 1900, 4 to 500. Violin Bow by Louis Morizon Frère, just this one picture it seems, 4 to 600. French violin bow inspired by taut, 4 to 600. A whole load of various bows, 41 various bows, 150 to 300. This looks like the usual kind of collection of random bows we see. Violin bow, old wooden stick, branded Charot of Paris, 5 to 700. Violin made in Mirecourt, the Entourage of Derazy, 5 to 600. Violin made at the Le Bertambert workshop, early 20th century there, 5 to 700. French cello bow, made in the JTL workshop or the Thibouville Lamy workshop, 5 to 700. Violin or viola bow, French work, circa 1845, Pajot School in Snakewood. Interesting, 5 to 1000 there, 500 to 1000. Interesting looking thing. Violin made in the 1920s, probably German, 500 to 700 there. Cello bow from the German school, 5 to 600. Lot of 3 bows from the German school, 5 to 700. German violin, late 18th century or early 19th century work. Entourage of Hopf, but once again we have no picture for some reason, 5 to 600. Have to go past that. Violin bow, French work, circa 1845, Meyer School, 500 to 1000 there. German violin, 1930s or 40s, 359 length of back, 500 to 600. Looks quite interesting. A lot of 3 bows from the German school, 500 to 750. Violin bow by Emile Francois Huchard, 500 to 1000 Swiss francs. French violin, 19th century work of Pillemont in Mirecourt, many restorations, 500 to 700 Swiss francs there, 366. It's pretty long. German violin, late 18th or early 19th century, 353 length of back, 5 to 600 is the estimate there. German violin, bearing a Borchers brand near the button, 359 length of back. Interesting looking wood on the back of that, with a bow, 6 to 800. Fairly interesting looking lot. French violin, late 19th century, 359 length of back, some restoration, 6 to 800. French cello in Mirecourt, early 20th century, 6 to 800. Oh, we've gone a bit ahead of ourselves again. Violin bow, made by Louis Morizot, 6 to 800. Violin made by Francois Lecavelle, 358 length of back, 6 to 800. Viola, German work, kind of late 19th century, with a bow as well, 6 to 800. Interesting looking bow. German violin, circa 1900, 6 to 800. Interesting violin, 1930s, 1940s, 6 to 700 is the estimate. Bow is a copy of Taut, 6 to 800 is the estimate. Looks like a pinned head, repaired headstock there. Yep. 18th century French cello, 3/4 size, with a Faisal label in Bordeaux, 600 to 1000. German violin, Klingenthal School, made in 1887 by Friedrich August Meissel, 700 to 800. That is the estimate. A very interesting 18th century violin made by Cabassa in Mirecourt, 363 length of back, 700 to 800 there. Violin from Eastern Europe, circa 1900, 700 to 800 there. Bow by Georges Bargenet for Roger Jerome, 800 to 1000 there. French violin made in Mirecourt around 1900 to 1920, 800 to 1000 there, 358 length of back. French violin, Mirecourt work, 19th century, 800 to 1000. French violin, 18th century work of Mirecourt there, with its original Baroque neck and some restorations, 800 to 900. Very nice 3/4 cello, Mirecourt, 800 to 1000. German violin, 19th century. It's fairly interesting, 800 to 1000 there. French violin of Mirecourt around 1925, 800 to 1000. We're gradually getting up in price-ish, or floating around. Violin, French work, late 19th century. Entourage of Francois Breton. That's 800 to 900 there. Violin made in Mirecourt, late 19th century. Entourage of Derazy, 800 to 1000. 18th century French violin, with the exception of the head, representing an animal from another period, a ram's kind of head there, interesting head. 800 to 900 is the estimate. Saying the F holes have been altered in a quite unfortunate manner. Violin with a look Gallican label, 800 to 1000. Viola Bow by Marc Lebert here, 800 to 1000. 19th century French violin made by Pierre Mansuy in Mirecourt, 800 to 1000. Violin German work, circa 1900, 800 to 1000. Cello bow with an interesting ebony and gold frog dedicated to Marteal and Deschamps. Interesting, 800 to 1000 there. Violin, late 18th century work. This is the table and the sides made by Nicolas Sutra. Interesting, 800 to 1000 there. Violin, 1930s, 1940s work there. Iron mark for Cavani, 800 to 1000. German violin, very late kind of 19th century, 900 to 1000 there, with a Raphael and Antoine Galliano in Naples kind of label there. Still an interesting looking thing, 900 to 1000. Interesting cello bow by Louis Morizot Fee, 900 to 1200 there, so we're getting a bit higher now. Mirecourt violin, 1930s, 1940s, probably made by Dudoin, 1000 to 1200 here. A violin bow by Roger Francois Lot, signed Gustave Viaume, 1000 to 1800. German violin, 19th century, lost part of the pictures there. 1000 to 1200 there. Violin made in Mirecourt around 1880. Entourage of Grandjean, 1000 to 1200. Violin bow by Nicolas Simon, 1000 to 2000 there. Violin bow by Charles Claude Husson, 1000 to 2000. A violin bow made in Switzerland by Finkel, 1000 to 1500. And a French violin, early 19th century, Entourage of Mathurin Remy, around 1820, 1000 to 1200. French violin bow, late 19th century, made for Colin Mazat, 1000 to 1600. French violin made by Charles Claudeau, circa 1820, 1000 to 1200. Nice French violin made by Thibouville under the direction of Louis Fricot. 1000 to 1100. 18th century French violin, work of Nicolas Chapuis, one of my favourites, 1000 to 1500. Mircore violin, a work of Nicolas Mouchand, around 1820, that's 1000 to 1200. German violin, late 18th century or early 19th century, 354 length of back, looks fairly interesting, 1000 to 1200. French violin, second 1900, the Charot Milot label, 1000 to 1200. 19th century French violin, inspiration from Brussia, with a brand for Derezy, 1000 to 1200. French violin, work of Maison Lebert here, 1000 to 1200. And 19th century Mircore violin there, with the Francois Richard label, 1200 to 1500. French violin made for Jules Levesque, 1200 to 1300. Violin made under the direction of Marc Lebert, 1200 to 1500 there. 19th century French violin made in Mircore by Thuvenil, 1200 to 1500. German violin made by Carl Friedrich Glass, branded with CF Glass under the bottom heel, 351, ready to play. Well, you don't often see that mentioned in auction houses, so 1200 to 1500 there. It's quite interesting. Cello, work of Mircore, late 18th century, restorations 1200 to 1500. A very interesting violin made by Nicolas Mouchard around 1820. Big crack on the back there, 1200 to 1500. A violin made in the workshop of Maison Marc Lebert, 1920s, 1200 to 1500. Nice French violin made at Thiberville under the direction of Louis Fricot, 1200 to 1500. German violin from the Paysold, Maison Paysold, 1200 to 1500 there. Interesting violin bow from the German school, branded E. Riedel, 1250 to 2000 there. Interesting looking frog. Violin bow by Emile Francois Huchard, 1925, 1250 to 2000. Violin bow by Louis Maurice Orphy, 1300 to 1800 there. Cello, German work, 1960s, 1500 to 2000. French violin, 18th century, without label, Mircore work, some restorations there. Interesting looking violin, 356 length of back, 1500 to 1800 there. German violin for the Mark Nakirch school, Mark Nakirchen, I'm sure. It's meant to be work of J.C. Schuster. Interesting head there. Label stuck on the C inside with the year 1783. Restorations and traces of worm, 1500 to 1700. Interesting Baroque violin with its original neck, 18th century work of Mircore. That's interesting. 363 backs, quite long. 1500 to 2000. French violin, early 19th century. Mircore work there. Francois Barbe label, 1500 to 1700. French violin, late 19th century, with a barrel label, 1500 to 2000. Cello bow by Nicolas Bazin, 1500 to 2000. Bow by Frank Dugin, 2004. Interesting frog there. 1500 to 2500 there. French violin by Pierre Claudot in Marseille, 1919. We've got 1700 to 2000 on that. Bow by Louis Morizot around 1925, 1700 to 2300. Violin bow by Pierre Malin, 1800 to 2000. French viola by Dominique Galland, 3.07 length of back. That's actually a really nice back there. Let's kind of make that a bit bigger. Yeah, nice looking back. And 1800 to 2000 is the estimate on that. French violin, miracle, 19th century, work of Joseph Garabeuf even, 1800 to 2200. Violin Bow by Francois Lot, around 1935, 1800 to 2800. Interesting 18th century German violin bearing a label of Gabriel David Buchstetter, 1771, 359 length of back. That's a curious one, 1800 to 2000. Violin miracle, 19th century, made by Mortissier. Got 1800 to 2000 on that. Violin made in miracle around 1930, 1940. 1800 to 2000 there. French viola there, made in miracle, 2000 to 3000. Violin made by Didier Nicolas Ain, circa 1820. That is 2000 to 2500. Violin collaboration, father and son, J.B. Collin Mezar there, 359 length of back, 2 to 2.5. Violin collaboration, Jean-Baptiste Collin Mezan, père and fille. Interesting back on that, 2 to 2.5. Cello, the work of Dominique Galland in Mirecourt, 2 to 3000. 18th century French violin, probably by Gavini in Mirecourt, 359 length of back. Looking at 2 to 2.5 on that one. Pretty early 19th century cello, with a label of Antonius Thier. Some restorations there, 2 to 2.5. Viola made in Germany, Mark Nukirkin, around 1880, 1900, ready to play, 403 length of back, nice back on it as well, 2 to 3000. Violin made in collaboration with Jean-Baptiste Collin Mezat, father and son, 2 to 2.5. They're always popular, those kind of ones. Violin made around 1920, 1930, with a Strad label, 354 length of back, 2 to 3. Violin made in Mirecourt by Charles Claudel and Amédée Dudouin, from 1920, 1930, 2.3 to 2.5. French violin made 1840, circa 1840 in Mirecourt by Charles Simonin, 357 length of back, 2.5 to 2.8. Nice violin made by Léon Mougenot in Mirecourt, 1925, 2.5 to 3. German cello, end of the 19th century, 2.5 to 3. Violin made by Jules Galliard in Mirecourt, with a certificate there, 1860s, with a certificate from G. Chanceroule in 2003, 2.5 to 3000 is the estimate. Violin, work of Mirecourt by Léon Mougenot Gauche, 1927, 2.5 to 3. Interesting violin made by Gustave Villaume, 1929, 2.5 to 3. That seems extremely low estimate on that. It's a really beautiful back on that, actually. Very interesting. 2.5 to 3. Very beautiful violin made by Léon Mougenot Gauche, 1926. Excuse me. 2.5 to 3 is the estimate. Violin, French work, 1870-1880, with a label for Marengo Romanus Rinaldi, 2.5 to 3000. French violin made in the workshop of Justin Darazi, about 1860, 3 to 3.5 there. Violin by Charles Bailey in Mirecourt, 1938. A few more pictures on this one, 3.5 to 4,500 here, so we're getting into some of the higher stuff towards the end. Here's a beautiful violin bow by Claude Thomasin for Liam Bernadelle, 3.5 to 5,000 there, the estimate. Interesting violin, work of Charles Enel, au Chevalier de Saint George, 359.5 length of back, 4 to 4,500 is the estimate there. A rare and interesting violin made by Charles Ressouche and F. Mignot in Bordeaux, 1910, under the number 181. Work very close to Paul Blanchard in Lyon. Exceptional state of conservation. Ready to play, 358 length of back, 4.5 to 5,000 Swiss francs there. Very nice violin made by Paul Knorr. Mark Kirkin around 1950. Galliano label inside, 5,000 to 5.5. Cello Bow by Stéphane Tomachot, 5 to 7,000 is the estimate there. Very nice French violin work of Émile Lehumbert, Paris 1931. Some original letters there with this one. 355 length of back. That's quite good. Must be some more pictures here. I was going to say we're missing a few pictures here, so they've really gone to town on this one. 7 to 8,000. So this is definitely a substantial lot. There's a few more pictures there. Interesting 18th century French viola, probably the work of Francois Gaviniers, for which it bears a 1734 vintage label, some restorations, 18th century headstock or scroll by another maker, 417 length of back. Not so many pictures on that. It's a curious looking back actually. Yeah, interesting looking viola. Anyway, 10 to 15,000 the estimate on that. Substantial. A magnificent violin by Nicolas Francois Caussin, made in Mirecourt around 1865-1870, inspired by Dominicus Montagnano of Venice, which it has a label of, accompanied by a 3/4 bow. Interesting, 352 length of back, 12 to 15,000 is the estimate. Definitely one of the nicer instruments we've seen in this auction. Violin Bow by Alfred Lamy, father, around 1900, 2.5 to 3,000. An interesting viola made around 1930 by Victor Quenol, luthier in Massy, inspired by the famous Italian luthier Guadagnini, of which it bears a label. Certainly interesting. 2.8 to 3.2. Oh, and I think that's kind of it. I thought we had one more, but no, it must be 195. So interesting auction, and very kind of happy that I was informed of it on one of the forums, because I was not aware of it. I'll put a link in the description for you, and here we are on the kind of the online bidding part of it, if you're kind of interested in that. Yeah, I'll put a link in the description and check it out for yourself. I think it's definitely worth kind of having a look at, because it's you know, not a top tier auction, but interesting enough. Some good photos, some potential kind of good prices there, at least good estimates, realistic ones. So yeah, check it out and see what you think. Thanks a lot for watching, and until next time, take care. Bye. Many thanks for tuning in to the Musical Instrument Investigator. I hope that you enjoyed the video. If you did, then please like, subscribe and turn on notifications, and watch out for the next video coming soon.